Hey, they might could do it better. I ain't tripping off all that shit. Standing on the train.
I ain't asked now, nigga, for nothing. I took the hard away. 12 put me over, coming with the dope. They took my heart away.
Doing great, doing great.
Great. So, where you from?
Originally from North Carolina, but I grew up in Atlanta. I came to live in Atlanta at the age of 7.
Brought you to Atlanta? Your mother moved here? Your family moved here? How'd that happen?
Actually, I was raised by my grandmother, and my mom was in school in Atlanta, and she wanted to finish her education, so I would be raised by my grandmother in North Carolina. But my grandmother passed away of a heart attack, so I came to be in Atlanta with my mom. In childhood, were spiritual and entrepreneurial. I made my first $2 at the age of 6. There used to be a time where you could turn in empty Coke bottles, and I witnessed that at a gas station, and my eyes grew big at that, and I was always driven and towards earning money because I saw somebody turn in bottles, and so I went and grabbed my red wagon, filled it up with empty Coke bottles, and took it to the gas station and made $2. And that was one of my passions, I guess, as a kid, was knowing that I could do something I thought only grown folks could do, and that was earn an income. Yeah. My other seed was spiritual. I grew up in the church. So my grandmother was a pianist, and she played, we were in church 4 to 5 times a week. So most of my time was spent in church.
How did you get in a position where you found yourself being homeless?
My homelessness was a result of a series of traumas, including childhood sexual abuse.
Tell me about that story. How did that happen?
Well, I was, as I told you before, I made my first $2 collecting bottles in the woods. Collecting bottles. One day I was in the woods looking for empty bottles, and I had my red wagon. I was dragging it through the woods, a little path in the woods, and a man came out and said I was trespassing. And I was raised to have good manners. And so I tried to apologize and leave, but he wouldn't let me leave. So he snatched my hand, the handle of the wagon fell, and he dragged me farther in the woods. And as a result, I was molested. And he said if I told anybody, he would kill whoever I told, my grandmother, my granddaddy, and he would kill me. So at the age of 6, you take those threats pretty serious. And so I buried that trauma deep down inside and went on with my life. And so that was the basis of my childhood trauma.
Well, tell me about going through high school, going through middle school, high school, and being the average kid, but having that in the back of your head. Before you got addicted to the drinking, how did you cope with it as just a child?
I would say, if I look back, that's a good question. I say, as I look back at my childhood and my years as a student, I think I just did everything extra. I couldn't be still. I was one of those kids that I think my conduct grades were always talk too much and can't be still. And I see that I just wanted to keep busy. I didn't want to think about those woods of North Carolina. So I would throw myself into whatever I was doing. I was into music. I was doing marching band. I was working part-time jobs at McDonald's and Baskin Robbins. I was always this busy person.
You ever feel like you want to get some type of revenge for that guy doing that to you?
No, actually, after I carried the burden for long enough. I buried that incident down in. I never saw him again, but I buried it down in my soul, and that gave birth to a whole lot of things. It gave birth to drug addiction. It gave birth to mental illness, major depressive disorder. So as I released this stuff, I began to heal. And I forgave. I had to forgive because it was on me. It was causing me, it was haunting me. And although I didn't get justice for that, I couldn't even tell you who it was today. If I seen it, I wouldn't know who it was. At the age of 6, I didn't remember. You just saw a grown man. I didn't recollect that face. I couldn't give a description today if I had to, but just the incident, just letting go of that, and with my spiritual maturity, I learned I had to forgive in order to cleanse my spirit, in order for me to be free enough to blossom. You know, I discovered, and it was only through treatment that I found out that it was those traumas that had me captive, that had me feeling unworthy, feeling like I did something to bring this on, feeling like, you know, what is going on with me, that somebody would do this to me. And so once I got understanding while in treatment, I saw where I veered off in life. You know, I was on this track, you know, this ambitious kid, honor roll student, off to college. And even in college, I still had a goal of being a millionaire by 30 and a billionaire by 40. You know, at the age of 12, I'm reading Think and Grow Rich. I'm reading Magic of Believing. I'm listening to Les Brown. I'm all about the positive thinking. I'm thinking that there's no way that I'm not going to be this millionaire. There's no way I'm not going to be this billionaire by 40. Yo, those are my thing. Millionaire by 30, billionaire by 40. I made myself a poster and had it on my bedroom wall. And as I got older, I read Wall Street Journal. I was just locked in, reading about other millionaires and billionaires and following their paths. But this trauma was something that was going on inside like a virus. Just unraveling things. And then I found that I was making unhealthy decisions or counterproductive choices. And that led to drug addiction. It led to homelessness and mental illness. Even one of my decisions to sell drugs at one point in my life, which was a bad decision.
But that wasn't in your life growing up, though. You always knew how to just hustle with selling things, doing things the right way for the most part.
Exactly, and that's I pretty much credit the business I have today to that because I sold drugs out of desperation. I actually started a business after I quit school and came back to Atlanta. And I didn't make it. But the whole reason I quit school was the hopes of having a record deal. I was talking to some A&R from Sony, I believe it was, and they were interested in seeing more of me and potentially talking about a record deal. So I automatically, just say, I'm about to grow up as a rapper. At that time I had a record out. I was signing autographs. There's a newspaper article behind me here that talks about my leaving Athens to come to Atlanta to start a record label. So when I got here, that fell through. I went through a period of drinking heavily every day, and then I snapped out of that and went back to work. But being that entrepreneur, I came up with another idea, a mail order idea, where you order memberships through the mail. And that did well, and I moved out to the wealthy part of Atlanta. But as technology came out with the internet, I was about to go out of business, so I made another bad decision, and that decision was to sell drugs. I happened to be producing a guy that was a big-time drug dealer. He died in his sleep, by the way. He passed away a few years ago. But he was a big-time dealer in Decatur, and I was producing him in music, so I knew him, but I didn't care about what he did or anything. I had my business, he did what he did, but when out of desperation, I knew I was going out of business. I told him to teach me to sell drugs. I knew some people out in Buckhead that did drugs, and I just, being an entrepreneur, I say, you know what, I'm going to supply the product. I've got a demand, and so I just kind of crossed the line. And as a result, 3 months later, I was arrested. And,
that's in that picture right there.
Well, no, that's that's not that picture. That's one of many mug shots. I've been arrested several times. Yeah, that was during the addiction. But I was given first offender because it was my first offense. And but I tell people that wasn't the worst sentence. See, as I went on with those traumas, with that feeling of that depressive disorder, I eventually ended up indulging into the drugs, and it gave birth to a 17-year drug addiction.
Really? What drug was you addicted to?
Crack cocaine.
Wow. So how did you get introduced to crack cocaine? Was it after your injury, or was it just being on the streets? Actually,
I was introduced to the drug before the injury. Mainly, I decided to sell crack. During the early 90s, it was a big epidemic, of course, and out of desperation, I spoke with somebody I knew that was a big-time dealer and told him to teach me how to sell it. So I got involved with it, and 3 months later, I got arrested. But about a year later, through the depression, the drinking, I took my first hit. And it hit me like a brick. At first, I was instantly hooked, and I began to, my habit escalated. within a few months, my drug habit was $18,000 a month.
Really? $18,000 a month?
Yeah, I was selling and smoking, but eventually I got to the point where I couldn't sell no more because
Exactly.
yeah,
Wow.
I dropped from 200 pounds to 130 pounds,
Really?
and yeah, I lost a lot of weight. My mom found me wandering the streets, and I can remember that face now. She looked at me. Last time she saw me, I was 200 pounds with a suit and tie on. After a year of drug use, I was 130 pounds with a shirt that I had on for 2 weeks. And she just started crying and told me to get out of the car. I was in the car with somebody, and she said, get out of the car. And she took me home to clean me up.
What was your mindset like? Take me, what was you thinking of looking back on life and where you was at first before you got addicted to the drug? What was the mindset like? Was the molestation on your mind heavily? Was the losing your business on your mind heavily? Like, what was the mindset like?
I think it was a combination of all that. I think once I got involved with addiction, it's almost like you found a reason to stay down, to keep medicating. You thought about this stuff more, and you begin to it begins to become your coping mechanism. You know, you cope with life. You know, the more you do, the worse you feel, and the worse you feel, the more you do. So it's a cycle that is it's an awful cycle once you're in that cycle. But it's another world. Addiction is another world. You know, in the midst of you can walk down the street at 11:30, 12 o'clock in the middle of the day when people are, or you can walk down the street when people are getting up going to work, and a person that is in the active world of addiction, they may be walking fast down the street to go get a nick of crack. Yeah. But you know, they're walking, or they might be fighting over a stem or something in the wee hours of the day, or during when 90% of the people are going to work, people are sitting out and they're in a world of addiction. And I lived that life. My mindset during that time was I need one more. I need to go up here and clean up the store for them. I can make $4 here. You know, you live to survive. After a certain amount of attempts to overcome and overcome addiction, you just kind of just settle for surviving. And my mindset at that point was, I'm just going to survive. You know, and this is after Mom attempted to clean me up, and she took me home. And I was there, and I would get clean for a few months, and then I would feel depressed, and I would go out for a night and end up using again. But after I made so many promises to Mom about bills, helping her with the bills, and going out and be gone all weekend doing payday, and coming home broke and hungry, I decided to stop dragging the family through the mud with my addiction. It was my addiction, and I was dragging the family down with my addiction. So I left the house, and I moved in with some more people. You know, we all just tried to survive. And that's that world, that whole world of addiction. It's just another world by itself.
Yeah, because I have someone close to me that I feel like been down that road before and made decisions. So you mentioned wife and college. So when you was going through your addiction, where was your wife at the time? What kind of relationship you and her have when you was going through this?
Well, actually, we didn't see each other. When we left, my wife today is Tanya Graham. And we were college sweethearts. We met at the University of Georgia, and we dated for a few years. And so when I left school, we kind of lost touch. So when I left school and came home and went through my ordeal, I hadn't seen her for some years. So actually, it would be 24 years before we were reunited.
That was 24 years?
24 years later out of school, yes. So she wasn't around during that time, during the time of my addiction.
Take me through that process from being on the street to now being successful. Take me through the process. The first day when you woke up and you said, I'm about to get out these streets. I'm about to get my life together. And I'm about to put myself in a position where I can have a successful life from here on out.
That was, the driving force behind that was determination. It was after that spiritual awakening. It was after that conversation with God. I was like, there's got to be more to life in this. 17 years of drug addiction. I went to school. I was an honor roll student. I had a business. I knew that life had more for me. I knew life had more for me, but I just didn't know, how to go about it. So, but after that awakening, after that surrendering, I kind of had help because I was arrested later that day. I was committed to go through drug treatment, but I ran away from the program. I was court ordered to go through treatment, so I ran, and there was a warrant for my arrest. And after that conversation with God that morning, later on that day, I was arrested and forced to go through treatment. But by then I was ready because I knew I needed treatment. So the first thing that happened while in the streets was I got treatment. And that there started to awaken some other things in me that began to propel me forward. Now, the level of my success, I had no idea. I rode past this building hundreds of times on my bicycle. I went in places like this, similar to this store, just trying to clean up, just to get money to go buy drugs. I had no idea that I would one day be a business owner on Auburn Avenue. I knew I wanted a better life, but these things that happened in my first 5 years of recovery, I credit that to God.
Hey. I see that smile. Huh? Huh?
Yeah. Watch your car. No. This is the right across here. Right now it's a Streetcar Facility. What it used to be? Thank you. It used to be a parking lot. Now in the street, it's housed now by the streetcar is housed under there. Actually, it's the Streetcar Facility. But right here was out. We'll walk up. Right here is where we're standing. Is where I step under that. There's a column. You see those columns there? Yeah. I would ride and sell my snacks on the bicycle, and then come up here and put it under this column. Now, my first night under this bridge people ask me about your first night under the bridge. I say, you know what? My first night, when I came up here, they tore down the apartments down the street. Down there was the apartments. Yeah. So I grabbed a couple cushions off the sofa, and I walked up to this bridge, and I said, I asked a lady. There was a lady up here, and she's in recovery today too. And I said, where can I put my pillows? She said, everybody has 2 parking spaces. So I went over and found my 2 parking spaces, and it was right up by the column. I wanted to be behind the column. I didn't want nobody to see me under the bridge. And so my first, I guess I said, this is my last night under a bridge. When I wake up in the morning, I'm going to get help. I said, I'm not going to be under no bridge. But the worst thing was, I woke up the next day and I said, you know what, that wasn't so bad. Nobody laughed at me, nobody tried to kill me. I'm okay. And so that being okay, that being content, will lead to a few more years under this bridge. Riding around selling my snacks, coming back, and laying down and going to sleep.
So when you were saving your money, where did you put your money at being up under a bridge like this?
I didn't save much money. It all went to the drugs. It was a lot of times I didn't even go to sleep. I would ride around 2 to 3 days without sleep. Getting high, make $5, go buy $5 worth of drugs, $10 or whatever. It's just a whole chase. The active addiction, just all night long, 2 or 3 days straight, and then finally when you too tired to go on, you just lay down and go to sleep. Sometimes you'll see people just laying down on the sidewalk, knocked out, and that's just kind of because your body can't take no more. You just lay down and you go to sleep. What I want to share with anyone that may be struggling or just not sure of themselves or which direction life is taking them is, number 1, don't give up. And number 2, hold on to this fact that God has you here for a reason. Throughout all my struggles, being crushed and put into a wheelchair, being healed from the wheelchair, strung out, homelessness, mental illness, to a business owner, book author, public speaker, any advice I would give to someone struggling, whether it be with addiction, whether it be financial, whatever it may be, remember that God has you here for a purpose. And we have to remain determined. We have to not give up, but continue to move forward, holding on to that, and also staying connected to God. Because it was God, it was that spiritual awakening that turned everything around for me, but it was also a decision that I made. I made a decision that there had to be more to life, and I wanted that more of life. And I decided to move forward, remaining focused, hard working,